Welcome, weary traveller. Settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, sink just a little deeper into that pillow, and let everything go soft and heavy and still. Because tonight we are going somewhere extraordinary, somewhere ancient and beautiful, and steeped in a tradition so precise, so demanding, so completely unlike anything the modern world has produced, that by the time we are done, you will feel, with complete and specific certainty, profoundly grateful for your pillow. Your ordinary, soft, unremarkable, magnificent pillow. Tonight, we are going to Japan. Not the Japan of bullet trains, and neon, and the dazzling organised chaos of modern Tokyo. We are going to a Japan that exists quietly alongside all of that, in the narrow stone-paved lanes of Kyoto's Gion district, where the wooden tea houses lean toward each other across streets barely wide enough for two people to pass, where paper lanterns cast their warm light on the evening stone, where the sound of a shamisen drifts through a latticed window into the cool night air. We are going to the world of the geisha, and here immediately we need to address something. Almost everything most people think they know about geisha is wrong. Not slightly wrong, not wrong in the details while right in the general outline, wrong in the fundamental premise, wrong in the most commonly held assumptions, wrong in exactly the ways that make the real story, the actual, documented, extraordinary real story, so much more interesting than the version that Hollywood produced and the world accepted without much scrutiny. The geisha is not what the movies say she is. She is something considerably more interesting, considerably more demanding, considerably more strange, and considerably more human. She is an artist. Specifically, and the Japanese language is very precise about this, she's a person of art. The word geisha breaks down simply. Gei, meaning art, and sha, meaning person. A person of art. Everything else that the word has accumulated in the Western imagination, the romance, the mystery, the various misconceptions that a century of cultural distance and creative interpretation have layered onto a very specific and very real profession. All of that can be set aside tonight. Tonight we are dealing with the real thing, and the real thing begins, as so many extraordinary things begin, with a surprising fact. The first geisha were men. Let that settle in for a moment. The profession that the world associates with the most refined and most distinctively feminine artistic tradition in Japanese culture. The elaborate kimono, the white makeup, the precise movements, the mastery of half a dozen classical arts was invented by men. Male entertainers in the pleasure districts of Edo period Japan, who played instruments and told jokes and generally kept the atmosphere light and entertaining for the wealthy clients of the district's establishments. They were called geisha, persons of art, men, and they were very good at their jobs, which is why when women began entering the profession in the mid-18th century, they called themselves onna geisha, woman geisha, to distinguish themselves from the male practitioners already established in the field. Within about 20 years, the women had completely taken over the profession. The male geisha essentially vanished, and the word geisha, freed from its masculine origin, became what it is today, one of the most recognized and most misunderstood words in the Japanese cultural vocabulary. This is how the story begins. Close your eyes, let your breath slow, and let the story carry you to Kyoto, to the lane called Hanamikoji, in the district called Gion, on a winter evening when the lanterns are just beginning to glow, and somewhere behind a closed screen, someone is practicing a song she's been practicing for 3 years and has not yet gotten quite right. She will get it right. She has all the time in the world, and none of it at all. The flower towns. Before we step inside the okiya, the geisha house, and meet the people who live there, we need to understand the world that contains them. Because the geisha world is not a random feature of Japanese culture that could have arisen anywhere. It arose in a very specific kind of place, for very specific historical reasons, and the place shaped the tradition in ways that are still visible in every element of how the world works today. The place is the Hanamachi. Hanamachi means flower town. It is the word for the specific districts in Kyoto and Tokyo, and a handful of other Japanese cities where geisha live and work. Neighbourhoods defined by the presence of the okiya, the tea houses, the performance schools, and the entire supporting infrastructure of the geisha world. The word is beautiful, and it is appropriate. The Hanamachi is a world in bloom, or was in its peak, and still is in its carefully tended remnant. Kyoto has 5 active Hanamachi today. The most famous is Gion, on the east bank of the Kamo River, a district of preserved Edo period wooden architecture that feels particularly in the evening, when the tourists have thinned and the lanterns have come on, and the occasional glimpse of a maiko hurrying through the lane creates a moment of genuine temporal dislocation, like walking into a woodblock print that forgot to stop being real. The other Kyoto Hanamachi are Pontocho, Miyagawacho, Kamishichiken and Gion Higashi, each with its own character, its own specialty arts, its own community of geisha and tea houses, and the complicated, long-maintained relationships between them that form the invisible architecture of the flower town's social world. Pontocho is a single narrow lane running along the west bank of the Kamo River, so narrow that you could reach out and touch both rows of buildings simultaneously if your arms were long enough, which they are probably not, but it would be a near thing. In summer, the restaurants and tea houses of Pontocho extend their dining platforms out over the river on wooden structures called yuka, and the experience of eating or drinking there on a warm Kyoto evening, the river moving below, the lights of the city reflecting on the water, the lanterns of Pontocho glowing behind you, is one of those experiences that Japan produces with an almost suspicious frequency. The experience of a place that knows exactly what it is and has been what it is for a very long time and sees no reason to change. Kamishichiken is the oldest Hanamachi in Kyoto, older than Gion, older than Pontocho, established in the 15th century from the leftover timber of a reconstruction of the Kitano Tenmangu shrine, which is the kind of origin story that only Japan produces. It is the smallest of the 5 districts, and the one that tourists find least often, which the geisha of Kamishichiken appear to regard as a feature rather than a bug. These flower towns developed primarily during the Edo period, the 2.5 centuries of the Tokugawa shogunate from 1603 to 1868, during which Japan was largely closed to outside contact and developed in its enforced isolation a cultural richness and a social complexity that produced kabuki theatre and haiku poetry and the tea ceremony and the woodblock print and, in the entertainment districts of the great cities, the geisha tradition. The Edo period is when the rules were set, when the Hanamachi established their boundaries and their hierarchies and their ways of doing things, when the distinction between the geisha, whose role was artistic entertainment only, and the courtesans of the pleasure districts was formally established and legally enforced, because the authorities of the period were very clear that these were two different things, and that the confusion of them was not to be permitted. This distinction matters. It was legally established. It was culturally enforced, and it is still, 300 years later, the foundation of what the geisha profession is and what it is not. The geisha sells art, that is all. That is everything. The okiya, the house. The okiya is the geisha house, the building that serves simultaneously as home, school, dormitory, wardrobe department, financial institution, and family unit for the women who live within it. From the outside, an okiya in the Gion district of Kyoto looks like any other well-maintained traditional Japanese townhouse. A narrow 2 or 3 story wooden building with a latticed facade, a small signboard by the door with the house's name in Japanese characters, and the general quality of modest discretion that the geisha world has always preferred to ostentation. The flower towns are not gaudy. They are restrained in the specific way that things are restrained when they are confident in their own quality and have no need to announce it loudly. Inside, the okiya is organized around the authority of one person, the okasan. Okasan means mother, and the woman who runs the okiya is addressed by this word by everyone in the house, because in the social and emotional structure of the geisha world, she functions as a mother in almost every sense that the word implies: provider, teacher, authority, protector, and the person whose approval or disappointment carries more weight than almost anyone else's. The okasan is typically a retired geisha or geiko, a woman who has spent her career in the flower towns, has accumulated the knowledge and the relationships and the financial resources necessary to run a house, and has chosen to apply all of that accumulated expertise to the training and management of the next generation. She knows the world her trainees are entering from the inside. She knows its demands and its pleasures, and its specific difficulties with the intimacy of personal experience. She knows which tea houses are worth cultivating relationships with, and which clients are worth having, and which are not. She knows the community. She knows the rules both written and unwritten, and she knows how to navigate a world built entirely on relationships with the skill that comes from having navigated it for decades. She also controls the money. The financial structure of the okiya is one of the aspects of the geisha world that surprises people most when they learn about it, partly because it is so different from how employment works in any other professional context, and partly because it places the trainee in a position of significant financial dependence for a significant portion of her career. Here is how it works. When a young woman joins an okiya as a trainee, the okiya pays for everything: housing, food, training in all the arts, the kimono, which are extraordinarily expensive, a single formal kimono with all its accessories potentially costing the equivalent of a new car, the wigs, the hair, the makeup, the various instruments and equipment required for training. All of it comes from the okiya's resources, and all of it is tracked, because all of it is a debt. The trainee accumulates this debt through her years of training. When she becomes a full professional and begins earning fees for her work, those fees flow first to the okiya, which deducts its expenses and its accumulated investment before passing the remainder to the geisha as her income. The process of paying off the debt and eventually achieving full financial independence can take years. Only when the debt is cleared can a geisha move out of the okiya and establish herself as an independent professional, a status called jikabi, meaning independent, that represents complete professional freedom and that many geisha work toward throughout their careers. This system has been criticized, and not without reason. The debt that accumulates during training can be very large. The dependence it creates on the okasan and the okiya is substantial. The power relationship it establishes is not a relationship between equals, but it is also the system that has transmitted the geisha tradition across 300 years, that has funded the extraordinary investment in training that producing a geisha requires, and that has maintained the standards of the art form at a level that the market alone could not sustain. The kimono that a maiko wears to her first banquet costs as much as a luxury car. Without the okiya system to fund it, the maiko could not afford to begin. The okasan knows this. The trainee knows this. The world knows this. And so the system continues, imperfect and functional and ancient, as so many things in the geisha world are imperfect and functional and ancient simultaneously. How they are chosen. This is the question that everyone asks, and the answer surprises almost everyone. Nobody recruits geisha. There is no talent scout walking the streets of Kyoto looking for beautiful young women with artistic potential. There is no audition process, no open casting call, no competitive selection program. A young woman who wants to become a geisha has to find an okiya, make contact and ask. She applies, and then she waits to see if she's accepted. The application process is straightforward, but the evaluation is anything but. The okasan who interviews a prospective trainee is not primarily looking for beauty, though physical presentation matters. She is not primarily looking for existing artistic talent, though some aptitude helps. She is looking for one thing above all others: seriousness. The seriousness of intent, the quality of the commitment, the evidence that this young woman has thought carefully about what she is asking to enter, and is genuinely prepared for what it requires. Not the romantic version of what it requires, not the movie version, but the actual version. The 4 a.m. wake-ups, the years of daily training, the debt, the hierarchy, the complete immersion in a world with its own rules and its own language and its own social structure that she will have to learn from the beginning, and that will ask of her, consistently and without much sentimentality, everything she has to give. The okasan has seen many young women come through her door who wanted to be geisha in the way that people want things they have seen in films, as an aesthetic experience, as a fantasy of beauty and elegance and the romantic past. These women do not last. The okasan knows this from experience. She has developed a very precise ability to distinguish between genuine commitment and romantic aspiration, and she applies this ability to every interview. The prospective trainee who passes this evaluation does not receive a contract or a start date or an onboarding package. She receives a more or less informal acknowledgement that yes, she may come, and here is when to arrive, and bring these things, and be prepared to work. She arrives, she begins. There is also a height requirement which nobody ever mentions, and which is genuinely fascinating. A prospective maiko cannot be taller than 160 centimeters, that is 5 feet 3 inches. This is not a suggestion, it is a limit, and the reason for it tells you something important about the practical reality of the geisha world beneath the romance of it. Maiko wear a kobo, tall wooden platform sandals that add approximately 10 centimeters to their height. A Maiko, who is already 5 feet 3, will be 5 feet 7 in her kobo, which is a perfectly manageable height for navigating the tea houses and the lanes of the Hanamachi. A Maiko, who is 5 feet 5, would be 5 feet 9, which creates practical difficulties in the low-ceilinged traditional architecture of the okiya and the tea houses, and which disrupts the visual proportions that the Maiko's elaborate costume is designed to create. Practical, precise, utterly unromantic. This is the geisha world in miniature, and there is a weight requirement too, but not the one people expect. A prospective Maiko must weigh at least 43 kilograms. Not must weigh less than, must weigh at least. The reason is that the full Maiko costume, the kimono and the obi, and the hair ornaments, and the wooden sandals, and all the layers beneath, can weigh up to 10 kilograms. A girl who weighs less than 43 kilograms does not have the physical strength to wear the costume for an entire evening of performing while maintaining the perfect posture and the fluid movement that the role requires. The costume requires strength. The training builds more. A Maiko by the end of her apprenticeship has the specific physical conditioning of someone who has been wearing a 10-kilogram costume and performing dance in it several evenings per week for years. She is, underneath the silk and the white makeup, an athlete. Nobody tells you this part either. The first year, the shikomi, the young woman who has been accepted into the okiya, begins her life in the flower town at a stage called shikomi, which translates approximately as preparation or training, and which involves, for the first year or more, almost no artistic training whatsoever. The shikomi cleans. She cleans the okiya thoroughly every morning. She does the laundry, she cooks, she runs errands. She manages the household tasks that keep the okiya functioning, under the direction of the okiya-san and the senior geisha who live in the house. She does all of this with the same focused attention she will later bring to the shamisen and the dance, because the geisha world teaches that the quality of attention one brings to simple tasks is the quality of attention one will bring to complex ones. She also waits. Every evening when the senior geisha of the house dress for their banquets and prepare to go out into the flower town for the evening's engagements, the shikomi helps them dress. She assists with the elaborate process of putting on the kimono, a process that, for a senior geisha in full formal dress, can take an hour or more and involves specific folding and tying techniques that require practice to execute correctly. She learns by watching. She observes the care and the precision with which the senior women prepare themselves, and she files away what she sees in the part of her mind that is building a comprehensive picture of what she is training to become. And then, when the senior geisha have gone out and the okiya is quiet, the shikomi waits up. She waits until they come home. This may be midnight. It may be 1 a.m. It may be later. The shikomi is there, awake when they return, to help them undress and to attend to whatever they need at the end of the evening. Then and only then she goes to bed, at a time that may allow her 4 or 5 hours of sleep before she needs to be up to begin the cleaning. This is the first year. And here is the thing that makes it remarkable. The Shikomi does not resent this, or at least she is not supposed to, and the ones who succeed in the system largely do not. Because the Shikomi year is understood by everyone in the geisha world as the most important year of the training. Not the year of the dance classes or the shamisen lessons or the tea ceremony instruction. Those come later. The Shikomi year is the year that determines whether a young woman has what the profession actually requires, which is not talent, which is not beauty, which is not a romantic feeling about traditional Japan. What it requires is service, the willingness to work hard for the benefit of others, the capacity to find dignity in simple tasks, the ability to be present and attentive and ready, always ready, regardless of how tired one is or how much one would prefer to be somewhere else. These qualities built in the Shikomi year through the daily practice of exactly these things are the foundation on which everything that follows is built. A geisha who cannot serve cannot entertain. A woman who cannot attend to the needs of others in the simple context of the household cannot read a room of guests and respond to each person's needs with the precision and the warmth that the ozashiki, the banquet, requires. The Shikomi year teaches this by teaching everything else first. The minarai learning by watching. After the Shikomi year, if the okasan judges that the trainee is ready, if the combination of her service and her attitude and the first tentative beginnings of her formal training suggest that she has the foundation to proceed, the young woman advances to the minarai stage. Minarai means learning by watching, and that is precisely what it is. The minarai attends ozashiki, the formal banquets at the tea houses where the senior geisha perform and entertain. But she does not perform. She does not entertain. She sits. She watches. She observes every detail of how the senior geisha manage the room, how they move between guests, how they respond to different personalities, how they introduce topics of conversation and let others develop them, how they deploy their arts at exactly the right moment, how they make every person in the room feel that they have the geisha's genuine and complete attention, even when the geisha is simultaneously attending to 8 other people. This is a skill that cannot be taught in a classroom. It can only be acquired by watching experts do it, and then doing it oneself. The minarai stage is the bridge between the classroom instruction that has begun in earnest and the real-world application that is still some time away. While the minarai does not perform, she does not go unnoticed. Her costume is, by deliberate design, more elaborate than what she will wear as a maiko, because she cannot yet speak for herself professionally. The costume speaks for her. She is introduced, she is present, she is building the relationships with tea house proprietresses, with regular clients, with a wider community of the flower town. That will be the foundation of her professional life. The minarai period is typically about a month. 1 month of watching and being seen and absorbing and not yet speaking professionally for oneself. Then comes the debut misadashi. The misadashi, the formal debut of a maiko, is one of the most elaborate and most significant ceremonies in the geisha calendar. In the days before her debut, the young woman visits every tea house and every geisha house in the Hanamachi with her wanesan, her older sister, the senior geisha who's been assigned as her mentor and guide. They visit together, they bow together. They present the traditional gifts, small wrapped packages of celebratory sweets that announce to the community that this young woman is entering the world of the flower town as a maiko, that she is now a professional participant in the tradition, and that she is under the sponsorship of this onsen and this okiya. This rounds of visits can take several days. The Hanamachi is a community, and the community must be informed through the proper channels in the proper way. There is no announcement on social media. There is no press release. There is a young woman in full maiko costume and makeup, moving through the lanes of Gion in the early afternoon light, bowing at every door, presenting her gifts, being received, beginning the web of relationships that will sustain to hear her career. On the day of the debut itself, she appears at the tea houses as a maiko for the first time in a professional capacity. She is ready, or as ready as months of training and one Minarai month of watching can make her, which is ready in the specific sense of having done everything that preparation can do, and now simply needing to do the thing itself. The Wane-san, the older sister. The Wane-san relationship is one of the most extraordinary and least known aspects of the geisha world, and it deserves its own careful attention because it is unlike any professional mentoring relationship that exists in any other field. The word one-son means older sister, and the relationship it describes is exactly that, a sisterhood, formal and permanent, created through a ceremony that is modelled on a Shinto wedding. When a maiko is ready for her debut, she and her chosen Wane-san go together to the Kaburenjo Theatre, the geisha performance hall of the Hanamachi, and perform the San-Sankudo ceremony. This is the sharing of sake from 3 cups in 3 sips, a ritual that in its original context is the central moment of a traditional Japanese wedding, the act that formally joins 2 people in a bond recognized by the tradition and the community. In the context of the Wane-san-imoto relationship, the ceremony creates a bond of permanent sisterhood between the senior geisha and her new younger sister. The Wane-san takes on a formal responsibility for the maiko's development, introduces her into the community, brings her to the ozashiki, teaches her the unwritten rules, models the behaviour and the bearing that the tradition expects. She gives the maiko her professional name. The maiko's geisha name is typically derived from a character in the Wane-san's own name, making the relationship visible in the very identity the maiko carries into her career. This name, derived from the older sister, is not simply a professional alias. It is a declaration of lineage. When people in the geisha world hear a geisha's name, they know which older sister gave it, and through that they know the lineage of training and relationships that the geisha carries. The names connect the present to the past, the new geisha to the tradition that produced her, in a chain that extends back through the generations of the flower town. The bond between Wane-san and Imoto, older sister and younger sister, is considered permanent. They remain sisters for the rest of their lives, long after the formal mentoring relationship has ended, long after both have retired. The geisha world creates families from people who are strangers through ceremonies that treat the relationship with the seriousness that the tradition considers it to deserve. This is not metaphorical. This is the actual social structure of the Hanamachi. The geisha house is the family. The okasan is the mother. The older sisters are the sisters. And the bonds created through ceremony and shared training and the years of proximity in the closed world of the flower town are bonds that function in the lives of the people in them with the weight and the durability of family bonds. They are family bonds, they just happen to be ones that were chosen and created rather than inherited. The hair, everything you need to know, and some things you did not want to let us talk about the hair, because the hair of a Maiko is one of the most extraordinary aspects of the entire tradition, and it involves a fact so surprising that most people, upon hearing it, require a moment to process it before they are ready to move on. The Maiko sleeps on a wooden box, not on a wooden pillow with a wooden box inside it, not on a specially cushioned wooden frame designed to make the experience comfortable. On a wooden box, a small, hard, elevated support that holds the back of the neck, not the head, off the sleeping surface, preserving the elaborate hairstyle that has been constructed during the weekly visit to the hairdresser. Because the Maiko's hair is done once a week, only once a week. The natural hair is washed and styled by an expert, a process that can take several hours and that produces one of 5 specific hairstyles worn at different stages of the Maiko apprenticeship, each with its own name and its own meaning. Hair ornaments called kanzashi, elaborate seasonal decorations of silk flowers, tortoiseshell, lacquer, gold, are arranged within the hairstyle according to the month and the occasion. The resulting construction is beautiful. It is also architectural, and it must last 7 days. The wooden box is called a takamakura. It is approximately the dimensions of a shoebox, padded slightly on the top surface and placed under the neck, not the head, so that the elaborate hairstyle can overhang the support without being crushed. The Maiko sleeps on it every night, all night, without significantly moving, because moving significantly will damage the hairstyle, and the hairstyle must last 7 days, and there is no option to redo it in the morning, because the hairdresser only comes once a week. Some okiya sprinkle a fine powder, sometimes flour, sometimes rice powder, on the pillow surface, so that in the morning, when the Maiko examines the evidence of the night's sleep, she can see whether her head has moved significantly. Moved significantly means the hairstyle is at risk. Not moved significantly means another day preserved. People who have heard about the wooden box tend to respond with a particular expression, the expression of someone who has just been told something they were not expecting and are now reconsidering several things they thought they knew about what comfort looks like in different cultural contexts. That expression is correct. The wooden box is exactly as uncomfortable as it sounds. The Maiko sleeps on it for the entire duration of her apprenticeship, which lasts between 3 and 8 years depending on when she began and when she is ready to graduate. 3 to 8 years, every night on a wooden box. There is a moment in every Maiko's career, typically when she's finally completed her apprenticeship and is transitioning to the status of full geisha, when she is permitted to wear a wig rather than having her natural hair styled. The wig can be removed at the end of the evening. The wig means she can wash her hair every day. The wig means she can sleep on a normal pillow. The moment when a newly graduated geisha lies down on a regular pillow, for the first time in years, is, by the accounts of those who have experienced it, one of the most purely, physically pleasurable moments of the entire career. A pillow. A soft, flat, ordinary pillow. After years of the wooden box, the luxury of it is in the context genuinely almost incomprehensible. The arts. What a geisha actually learns. The training in the arts begins during the Shikomi period in a preliminary way and intensifies through the Minari and Maiko stages into the full professional practice of the working geisha. It is more extensive, more specific, and more demanding than almost anyone who has not been inside the system fully appreciates. The primary arts are dance and music, specifically the style of classical Japanese dance associated with the particular school of the Hanamachi, because different Hanamachi have different dance schools with different styles and different repertoires, and the dance tradition of Gion is not the same as the dance tradition of Kamishichiken, though both are deeply rooted in the classical Japanese performing arts tradition. The Maiko attends dance class at the Kaburenjo, the performance hall, every day, every single day. The teacher is a master of the school, and the instruction is given in the traditional Japanese manner, which is by demonstration and repetition rather than by verbal explanation. The Maiko watches the teacher. She copies. She is corrected. She copies again. Over hundreds and eventually thousands of repetitions, the dance enters the body, not as memorized sequence but as embodied knowledge, the kind of knowledge that lives in the muscles and the balance and the instinctive sense of where the body is in space at every moment. This is the kind of knowledge that takes years to build and that, once built, cannot be taken away. The shamisen is the classical three-string Japanese lute, a deceptively simple-looking instrument that produces a sound of extraordinary depth and resonance, and that is significantly more difficult to play well than it looks. The Maiko begins shamisen instruction early in her training and continues it throughout, because the shamisen is the instrument most central to the traditional music of the geisha world, and a geisha who plays it poorly is, in the geisha world, a contradiction in terms. The koto, the long-stringed floor instrument, appears in some Hanamachi training programs. The taiko drum, the fu flute. The specific instruments depend on the Hanamachi and the okiya, and the particular strengths and interests of the trainee and the teacher. But the musical training is always substantial and always sustained across the full length of the apprenticeship. Singing traditional Japanese classical singing in the styles associated with the performance traditions of the Hanamachi is part of the musical training. The voice is an instrument, and it is trained as one, with the same attention to technique and the same daily practice that the shamisen receives. The tea ceremony is a separate art form with its own teacher and its own school and its own several hundred-year tradition of philosophy and aesthetics, and the very specific practice of making and serving tea in a way that is simultaneously completely functional and completely beautiful. The Maiko learns this. She attends tea ceremony class. She learns to perform the ceremony with the precision and the grace that the tradition requires, because the ability to serve tea correctly is part of the basic professional equipment of the geisha world, as fundamental as the shamisen. Flower arranging, ikebana, is another art with its own master and its own tradition and its own specific aesthetic principles, which are not the principles of Western flower arranging. Ikebana is not about abundance or colour or the dramatic display of flowers. It is about the relationship between the materials and the space they occupy, about the asymmetry and the negative space and the single perfectly placed stem that does more than 100 stems arranged without thought. The Maiko learns this aesthetic and this practice, calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing, of producing Japanese characters with a brush in a way that is simultaneously correct and graceful and expressive, is a classical accomplishment, and the Maiko is expected to develop it. Tea ceremony, flower arranging, calligraphy, dance, shamisen, singing, koto. And then, crucially, and this is the one that surprises people most, conversation. The geisha is trained in conversation the way she is trained in everything else. Not simply in the mechanics of talking, anyone can talk, but in the art of conversation as a social practice. How to ask questions that open rather than close. How to listen with the quality of attention that makes the person being listened to feel genuinely heard. How to navigate between topics, between personalities, between the different registers of formality and playfulness that different guests and different occasions require. How to read the room, to sense the mood, the dynamics, the unspoken needs of the gathering, and to adjust accordingly. The geisha is expected to be able to discuss politics, economics, current events, literature, art and sport with the same facility with which she plays the shamisen. Her guests are typically powerful and educated men, businessmen, politicians, artists, professionals, who are paying a significant sum for an evening that includes not just performance, but genuine, intelligent engagement. A geisha who can perform but cannot converse is only half equipped for her profession. This is the training that produces the complete geisha. Not one art, but many. Not talent alone, but the discipline to develop talent. Not natural grace, but the years of practice that make grace look natural. The costume, the weight of beauty. We have mentioned the weight of the Maiko's costume, and we should return to it, because the full reality of what a Maiko wears is one of the most extraordinary aspects of the entire tradition, and it connects directly to everything we have said about the physical demands of the role. The kimono is the foundation. The Maiko's kimono is distinguished from the kimono of a regular Japanese woman or a full geisha by several specific features. The most immediately visible of which is the long dangling sleeve called the furasode, and the long trailing hem called the ohashori that extends behind the Maiko as she walks, trailing elegantly on the floor, requiring a specific style of movement that has been practiced until it is completely natural. The kimono itself is made of silk, elaborate hand-painted or woven silk in patterns and colours that are both beautiful and coded with information about the Maiko's stage of training and the season. The colour and pattern of a Maiko's kimono shifts through the year with the seasons. Plum blossom in winter, cherry blossom in spring, water patterns in summer, autumn leaves in autumn, and the specific patterns and colours she wears signal her hanamachi and her level of seniority to anyone in the geisha world who knows how to read them. The obi, the wide sash tied around the waist, is on a Maiko not tied in the back in the standard way, but allowed to hang in a long decorated panel down the back called the darari no obi, which is unique to the Maiko and is one of the most immediately recognizable visual markers of her status. The darari no obi is long, heavy, and requires specific skill to tie and to manage through an evening of movement and performance. The kanzashi, the hair ornaments, are changed monthly. Each month has its specific kanzashi, made to reflect the season and the festivals of the month in silk flowers, lacquer, tortoiseshell, and other materials. The kanzashi of the full-bloom cherry blossom month are different from the kanzashi of the maple leaf month, and a knowledgeable observer can determine the month simply by looking at what a maiko is wearing in her hair. The okobo, the wooden platform sandals, tall lacquered wooden blocks that click on the stone lanes of the hanamachi with a sound so specific and so associated with the maiko that residents of Gion can hear a maiko coming before they see her. And the click of the okobo on the evening stone has become one of the signature sounds of the Kyoto hanamachi in the way that few sounds in any city are so precisely associated with a single specific tradition. All of this together, kimono and obi and kanzashi and okobo and the underlayers, and the collar and the various accessories, weighs approximately 10 kilograms. 10 kilograms, 22 pounds, the weight of a large bag of flour, worn on the body for an entire evening of performing and entertaining and dancing and playing the shamisen and engaging in intelligent conversation and managing a room of demanding guests with warmth and precision, while maintaining perfect posture and perfect composure on tall wooden sandals, the white makeup and the triangle of bare skin, the white makeup of the maiko and geisha, the oshiroi, the white foundation that covers the face and neck and the back of the neck in the distinctive pattern that is one of the most immediately recognizable visual markers of the tradition. It is not, as most people assume, purely decorative. It is functional. The tea houses of the Edo period were lit by candles and oil lamps, warm, flickering, low light that created beautiful atmosphere and terrible visibility. The white makeup was applied heavily to ensure that the performers' facial expressions were visible to everyone in the room. The white face catches light, it reflects it. In a room lit by candles, a white-faced performer can be read clearly from across the room in a way that a naturally toned face cannot. When electric lighting arrived in Japan, the practical function of the white makeup was superseded. The makeup stayed anyway, because by then it had become the visual language of the tradition, the thing that says geisha as immediately and unmistakably as the kimono and the kanzashi and the click of the okobo on the stone. The application of the makeup is elaborate and takes considerable time. The face, the neck, and the back of the neck are covered with the white oshiroi. The eyes are outlined in black and red. The eyebrows are painted. The lips, and here is a detail that surprises people, a maiko in her first year paints only her lower lip in the particular deep red that is the geisha lip colour, only the lower lip, for the whole first year. The effect is striking and intentional. It signals to everyone who sees it that this is a young maiko in her first year, and the community of the hanamachi reads it as such. As she progresses through her apprenticeship, both lips are painted, but the lower lip only for the first year. And then there is the back of the neck, the nape of the neck, the small area of bare skin left deliberately unpainted in the otherwise completely white coverage of the neck, is one of the most specifically beautiful and specifically intentional features of the maiko's appearance. In the Japanese aesthetic tradition, the nape of the neck has long been considered one of the most beautiful and most intimate parts of the body. To frame it deliberately in white to create a pointed triangle of bare skin at the base of the elaborately coiffured hair is to draw the eye to something that the tradition considers worth looking at. 2 or 3 lines are drawn at the edges of the unpainted area, framing it in white. Senior geisha have 2 lines. Special occasions and certain hanamachi use 3. The specific application signals seniority and occasion to the geisha world, the way the kimono pattern signals the season. Every element of the maiko's appearance is coded information for those who know how to read it. Everything means something. Nothing is accidental. The tea house, the ozashiki. The ozashiki is the banquet, the gathering at the tea house at which the geisha performs and entertains. It is the core professional event of the geisha world, the occasion for which all the training exists and toward which all the preparation is directed. To attend an ozashiki, you must be introduced. This is absolute. There is no other route. A stranger cannot call a tea house in the hanamachi and book an ozashiki the way one books a table at a restaurant. It is not done. It has never been done. The tea houses of the hanamachi maintain a clientele of established, known, trusted customers, typically wealthy businessmen or professionals who have been coming for years, and new clients can only enter through the introduction of an existing client who vouches for them. This system of introduction, known as Ichigen-san Okotowari, which translates as no first-time customers, has maintained the character and the exclusivity of the ozashiki world across generations. It keeps out people who would be disruptive. It maintains the trust between the tea house and the geisha. It ensures that everyone in the room has been vetted, in some sense, by the community of the hanamachi before being admitted to it. The cost of this exclusivity, for those who do gain access, is real. An evening at a tea house in Gion, the geisha's fee, the tea house's fee, the food, the drinks, can cost several $1,000s per person for an evening. Inside the ozashiki, the room is traditionally simple. Tatami mats, low tables, screens that can be opened to reveal a garden. The minimal, elegant aesthetic of classical Japanese interior design that creates the sense of being in a space specifically designed to allow the people in it to be the thing of interest rather than the decoration. The geisha enters. She bows. She takes her place. And the evening begins. She talks. She listens. She plays the shamisen. She sings. She dances if the occasion calls for dance, which not all ozashiki do, and reading which occasions call for which contributions is itself a skill that takes years to develop. She pours drinks. She attends to her guests with a specific, genuine, individually calibrated attention that is the geisha's core professional offering. Not the performing arts, which are the medium, but the quality of presence, which is the product. The word that the geisha world uses for this is not entertainment. It is not service. It is not performance. It is something that does not translate easily into English. The quality of being fully present with a person, of attending to them with genuine interest and genuine warmth, of making them feel for the duration of the evening that they are in the company of someone who finds them genuinely interesting and is genuinely glad to be in the room with them. This quality, in a world where most interactions are transactional, rushed, half-attentive, partial, is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. And the training that produces it is, in the end, training in attention, in presence, in the art of being somewhere completely, rather than being somewhere while thinking about somewhere else. The maiko who cleaned the okiya every morning for a year and waited up until midnight every night for her senior sisters. She was not merely cleaning and waiting. She was being trained in the quality of sustained unglamorized attention. The attention that the osashiki requires. The time, incense and flower money. Time in the osashiki world is measured differently from time everywhere else. The fee charged for a geisha's presence at an osashiki is called hanadai, flower money. It is not an hourly rate in the modern sense. It is calculated according to a unit of time called a senko, the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn down completely. The incense stick burns. The room fills slowly with its particular fragrance, and when the stick has burned to nothing, another period of flower money is owed. This system of incense time dates from the Edo period, when the accurate measurement of time was a practical challenge, and the incense stick offered a consistent, sensory, beautiful solution. The time of the osashiki is not measured by a clock on the wall. It is measured by the smell in the room and the length of ash on the incense holder and the slow, specific, olfactory experience of time passing. In the modern hanamachi, the incense time has been converted to a financial unit, a specific number of yen for a specific duration, calculated and managed through the kenban, the geisha registry, which handles all the booking and billing for the hanamachi's geisha. But the word still exists, the concept still exists, the fee is still in the vocabulary of the flower town, flower money. The geisha does not receive this money directly and immediately. It flows through the tea house to the kenban to the okiya, which manages the geisha's accounts and deducts its expenses before passing the net income to the geisha. The financial relationship between the geisha and the money she earns is mediated by the system at every point, which is one of the aspects of the geisha world that most resembles, and this is not an entirely comfortable resemblance, an arrangement that benefits the institutions more than the individuals. The games. The osashiki is not, whatever the popular image suggests, a solemn and formal affair. It is also fun. The geisha are trained in osashiki games, parlour games played between geisha and guests that are designed to be accessible to everyone, regardless of whether they speak Japanese, that generate genuine laughter and genuine competition, and that allow the geisha to display the wit and the playfulness that are as much a part of the professional repertoire as the dance and the shamisen. The most popular game is Konpira Fune Fune, a hand game played to a specific song in which the geisha and the guest take turns covering and uncovering an object on the table between them, with complex and fast-changing rules about which hand position corresponds to which movement. The game is simple to learn and essentially impossible to play perfectly at speed, which means that both the geisha and the guest make mistakes, which means that both laugh, which means that the barrier between performer and guest dissolves in the specific warmth of shared laughter over a shared and gently humiliating experience. Tora 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 is full-body rock, paper, scissors, played with the geisha behind a screen and then dramatically revealed. The geisha as a tiger, the geisha as a grandmother, the geisha as a hunter, and the same on the guest's side, with the geisha guiding the guest through the options beforehand so that nobody is confused and everyone is ridiculous together in the same moment. These games have been played in the osashiki of Gion for generations. The geisha who plays them plays with the specific skill of someone who has played them hundreds of times and has learned exactly how to lose in ways that make the guest feel clever, and exactly how to win in ways that make the guest feel delighted at the loss rather than deflated. The game is not really about winning. The game is about the laughter. The laughter is about the presence. The presence is the product. The seasons. Everything changes with the month. The geisha world is organized by the seasons in a way that goes beyond the obvious observation that Japan has 4 of them. The kanzashi, the hair ornaments, change every month, and each month's kanzashi reflects the specific seasonal and cultural moment of that month. January has its ume, the plum blossom that is the first flower of the Japanese New Year. February has the tortoiseshell ornaments of winter luxury. March brings the rapeseed flower. April, cherry blossom, the iconic sakura, the ornament that is perhaps the most photographed of all the kanzashi in the entire year. May has the wisteria. June, the hydrangea and the willow. July and August, the lacework of summer patterns. September, the bush clover. October, the maple. November, the chrysanthemum. December, the fan pattern of the New Year preparation. 12 months, 12 kanzashi, each one designed and made by specialists in the traditional crafts that support the geisha world, the kanzashi makers, the kimono weavers, the wig makers, the obi artists, the okobo craftsmen, a whole ecosystem of traditional Japanese craft industries that exists in significant part because the geisha world still requires what these craftspeople make. When the kanzashi changes, the kimono changes. When the kimono changes, the colour of the collar changes. When the collar changes, the whole visual statement changes. The maiko who appears in the lanes of Gion in April is wearing something different in every detail from the maiko who appeared in November, and the details tell the calendar as precisely as any clock. This seasonal calibration extends into the dance repertoire and the music repertoire. The pieces performed at Ozashiki shift with the season. Certain songs belong to summer, others to the New Year period, others to the cherry blossom season. The geisha does not choose arbitrarily from her repertoire. She reads the season and offers what the season asks for, because the geisha world understands that beauty is always specific, always of a particular time and place and occasion, and that the art is to match the offering to the moment. The 5 public performances, 5 times per year, the geisha of Kyoto's Hanamachi perform in public, formal theatrical productions open to ticket buyers, staged at the performance halls of the Hanamachi with full cast and full production values. These are the Odori, the dance performances. Miyako Odori in April in Gion Kobu, the most famous and most attended. Kamogawa Odori in Pontocho in May. Kitano Odori in Kamishichiken in April. Gion Odori in Gion Higashi in November. Takigi no in the summer at the Heian Shrine. The Miyako Odori, the cherry blossom dance, has been performed every April in Gion since 1872, which makes it one of the longest running theatrical productions in the world, with an unbroken run. The hall fills with tourists and locals, and regular attendees who have been coming for years or decades, and the Maiko and Geiko of Gion Kobu perform a program of traditional dances that showcases both the individual skills of the performers and the collective beauty of the tradition. Attending the Miyako Odori is one of the ways into the geisha world that is genuinely open to the public. A formal ticketed performance in a traditional theatre with no introduction required, in which the arts that the geisha train for years to develop are displayed for anyone who cares to see them. The geisha preparing for the odori spend months in additional daily rehearsal on top of their regular training. The production is substantial. Costumes, sets, choreography, music, the specific calibration of each performer to her role within the ensemble. The opening performance of the Miyako Odori is one of the events of the Kyoto cultural calendar, and the morning of the opening day in the Gion Hanamachi has a specific quality of concentrated attention and purpose that is palpable to anyone walking through the lanes. The disappearing world. There were 80,000 geisha in Japan in the 1920s. There are approximately 1,000 today. The decline from 80,000 to 1,000 happened over a century, and it happened for reasons that are both straightforward and deeply complicated. The Second World War disrupted everything. The hanamachi were closed, the geisha dispersed, the tea houses shut, the training discontinued. The post-war economic recovery that followed was rapid and in many ways extraordinary, but the social landscape it produced was not the social landscape of the Taisho era. The new Japan was different. The places where powerful men gathered to be entertained by geisha were different. The entertainment options were different. The number of geisha has been declining for most of the century since the 20s. The rate of decline has slowed in recent decades, partly because the surviving hanamachi have become more conscious of the need for preservation and more active in their efforts to attract and retain trainees, and partly because international interest in the geisha tradition has created a certain cultural prestige that supports the continuation of the institution. But 1,000 is not 80,000. 1,000 distributed across 5 hanamachi in Kyoto and a small number of geisha communities in Tokyo and a few other cities is a world that is undeniably in its late stages. The people within it know this. The Oka-san who runs an okiya knows that she may be one of the last to do so. The Maiko who begins her training knows she's entering something rare. The senior geiko, who has practiced her art for 30 years, knows that the world she has given her life to is smaller than the world that her predecessors gave their lives to, and yet the training continues. The kanzashi change with the months. The wooden box is slept on every night. The incense burns. The shamisen is played. The ozashiki gather. The okobo click on the stone lanes of Gion in the winter evening. The tradition continues because the people within it have decided that it is worth continuing, that the beauty is worth the difficulty, that the art is worth the sacrifice, that the world that the hanamachi has maintained across 3 centuries of Japanese history, through the Meiji Restoration and the Taisho era and the Second World War and the economic miracle and the lost decade and everything that has come since, is worth carrying forward into whatever comes next. They may be wrong about whether they will succeed. They are not wrong about whether it is worth trying. What geisha actually are, having come this far, through the wooden box pillow and the incense time, and the ones and ceremony, and the 10-kilogram costume, and the year of cleaning before any artistic training begins. We are now in a position to answer the question properly. What is a geisha? She is the product of one of the most sustained and demanding artistic training programs that any culture has ever devised. She is a practitioner of multiple classical art forms, each of which would take a lifetime to master individually, all practiced simultaneously across years of daily instruction. She is a social artist whose primary medium is presence, the quality of attention and warmth and intelligent engagement that makes the people she is with feel for the duration of the encounter genuinely valued and genuinely entertained. She is a keeper of tradition, one of the people who, by doing what she does and doing it as well as she can, ensures that the tradition survives to be passed on. She is a woman who has made a specific and demanding choice, informed by genuine knowledge of what the choice entails, and who lives with that choice every day in the specific physical reality of the wooden box and the 10-kilogram kimono, and the incense time, and the flower money. She is also, and this is the thing that the movies miss most completely, an ordinary person, a woman with preferences and irritations and friendships and private jokes and things that make her laugh when she lets herself laugh, and things that worry her when she thinks about the future. A woman whose extraordinary professional exterior exists alongside a private interior life that is as mundane and as human as anyone else's. The white makeup is applied every evening. Every morning it comes off, and underneath it is a person. The Edo period, the world that made the geisha. To understand the geisha fully, we need to spend a little time in the world that produced her, because the geisha tradition did not emerge from nowhere. It emerged from a very specific historical moment, with very specific social conditions, and understanding those conditions makes the tradition make sense in a way that it otherwise does not. The Edo period, the 2.5 centuries of rule by the Tokugawa shogunate, from 1603 to 1868, is one of the most extraordinary chapters in Japanese history, and not for the reasons that Western history tends to assign it. The standard Western narrative of the Edo period emphasizes the isolation. Japan's closure to most foreign contact under the Sakoku policy, the way the country turned inward while the rest of the world was industrializing and expanding. What this narrative misses is what Japan was doing while it was turned inward. It was developing, economically, culturally, socially, in ways that produced the Japan that the Meiji restorers of 1868 had to work with, and found far more sophisticated and far more ready for modernization than the isolation narrative suggests. The cities of Edo, Japan, particularly Edo itself, the city that would become Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto, were among the largest and most sophisticated urban environments in the world. Edo, by the early 18th century, had a population of over 1 million people, making it one of the largest cities on earth, at a time when London had perhaps half that. These were complex, economically active, culturally rich environments, and the culture they produced, the kabuki theatre, the woodblock print, the haiku poetry, the tea ceremony as popular practice, and the entertainment districts, was the product of an urban merchant class with money, leisure, and sophisticated taste. The entertainment districts of Edo, Japan were called yukaku, pleasure quarters, and the most famous of them was the Yoshiwara in Edo, a walled quarter dedicated to various forms of entertainment and controlled by the shogunate with a specific purpose of keeping the various forms of entertainment organized, taxable, and geographically contained. Similar districts existed in Osaka's Shimabara and Kyoto's various entertainment neighborhoods. Within and around these districts, the geisha world developed. The male geisha, the original persons of art, worked as a kind of supporting entertainment. The atmosphere workers of the pleasure district, who created the environment in which the more expensive and more formal entertainments could occur. They played instruments, they told stories, they made the room warm and the conversation flow when women entered the profession and eventually dominated it. They brought with them the full range of classical Japanese arts, the dance traditions of the imperial court and the No theatre, the music of the classical repertoire, the conversational arts of the educated aristocratic woman, and applied them to the entertainment context of the merchant city. The result was something new and something old at the same time. The arts were ancient. The context was urban, commercial, sophisticated. The combination was distinctly Edo. The shogunate, alert as always to the potential for the entertainers to cross the line into the other services offered in the pleasure districts, established and enforced a distinction between geisha and courtesans with a specific legal clarity of a government that preferred its categories of entertainment to be legible and its tax collection to be straightforward. The geisha were registered. Their profession was defined. The rules were set. Those rules, established in the Edo period, are still the foundation of what the geisha profession is today. 300 years later, the categories defined by a government that no longer exists are still observed by a tradition that has outlasted it by a century and a half. This is what traditions do when they're strong enough. They outlast the world that produced them. They carry forward the forms and the rules and the practices of their origin long after the origin has become history. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes what they carry forward is worth carrying. The specific arts in depth. We have listed the arts that the geisha learns. We should spend more time with them, because the brevity of the list obscures the depth of the training. The dance tradition of the Gion Hanamachi belongs to the Inoue school, a school of classical Japanese dance founded in the early 19th century that is one of the most prestigious and most demanding of the traditional Japanese performing arts schools. The Inoue style is characterized by a particular quality of restraint and interior expression. The dancer does not project emotion outward in the broad, declaratory way of Western theatrical dance, but contains it, suggests it, creates it in the space between the movement and the stillness, in the relationship between the body and the music, and the specific quality of presence that the training builds over years. Learning to dance in the Inoue style is not like learning a sequence of movements to music. It is like learning a language, a language of the body, of weight and balance and the specific quality of how a hand moves through air and what that movement means and how it relates to the movement before it and after it, and to the music and to the season and to the occasion and to the audience. The first pieces a Maiko learns are simple in their movement vocabulary, but not simple in their execution. She practices them hundreds of times. The teacher watches. The corrections are precise and consistent. The same correction may be made dozens of times before the body has absorbed it sufficiently that it stops making the mistake. This is not because the Maiko is slow to learn. It is because the body learns differently from the mind. The mind can understand a correction immediately. The body needs repetition. The training provides the repetition. The shamisen, for its part, is an instrument with a deceptively simple appearance. 3 strings, a rectangular skin-covered body, a long neck, a large triangular plectrum called a bachi. The combination produces a sound of extraordinary character, percussive and melodic simultaneously, with a quality of attack at the beginning of each note that gives the music its specific energy and its specific emotional weight. Playing the shamisen well means playing it with the correct physical relationship between the body and the instrument, the correct angle of the bachi, the correct tension of the strings, the correct left-hand position for the notes being played. It means playing with the specific rhythmic subtlety that the traditional music requires, the pauses in the right places, the accelerations and decelerations that give the music its expressive shape. It means playing with enough facility that the technical demands of the instrument are no longer occupying the conscious attention, freeing the player to attend to the music itself. This takes years. There is no shortcut. The Maiko who sits down to her shamisen lesson at 10 in the morning and practices until noon is doing what all musicians have always done, accumulating the specific repetition that builds the specific skill, one practice session at a time, toward a facility that will eventually make the difficult look effortless. Effortless is never effortless. Effortless is 10,000 hours. The tea ceremony deserves its own extended attention because it is perhaps the most philosophically rich of all the arts the geisha learns, and because the philosophy it carries is one of the most specifically Japanese philosophical frameworks ever developed. The tea ceremony, Chado, the way of tea, was codified in its definitive form in the 16th century by the tea master Sen no Rikyu, who distilled the aesthetics and the philosophy of the ceremony into 4 principles that are still the foundation of the practice today. Wa, harmony; Kei, respect; Sei, purity; Jaku, tranquility. These 4 principles are not decorative. They describe the actual experience that the ceremony is designed to produce. Harmony between the people in the room, between the room and its objects, between the moment and the season. Respect for each person present, for the objects used, for the tradition. Purity of intention and of the physical space. Tranquility, the quality of stillness that the ceremony creates, and that it is designed to create, the settling of the mind that a bowl of tea made and received with complete attention can produce. The geisha who has learned the tea ceremony has not simply learned a procedure for making and serving tea. She has learned a framework for being present with another person in a way that honours both of them. This framework, the understanding of how attention and care and the quality of presence transform a simple act into something of genuine significance, is directly applicable to the ozashiki and to every other professional situation the geisha encounters. The tea ceremony teaches presence. The ozashiki requires it. They are the same training in different forms. The kimono in extraordinary detail. The kimono deserves more than the description we have already given it, because the kimono of the Maiko is one of the most complex garments in the history of human clothing, and the process of putting it on is one of the most precisely choreographed dressing procedures in existence. A full Maiko outfit consists of not one garment, but many. The foundation is the harajuban, the innermost layer worn against the skin, a simple white undergarment that provides a smooth base for everything above it. Over this goes the nagajuban, a longer undergarment, this one visible at the collar and the cuffs of the finished costume, and therefore required to be perfectly adjusted and perfectly white, because the Nagajuban collar, the white band visible at the neck above the kimono collar, is one of the most observed details of the entire outfit. Over the Nagajuban goes the kimono itself, the outer garment of elaborately woven or painted silk that is the most visible element of the costume. The kimono is wrapped left over right, always, invariably, because right over left is how the dead are dressed in Japan, and the distinction is not one that anyone in the tradition has any interest in blurring, and held in place by a series of ties and bands at the waist. The obi, the wide sash, goes on next, and on a maiko it goes on in a specific way that distinguishes her from everyone else, with the long decorated panel of the darari no obi hanging down the back nearly to the hem of the kimono. The obi is long, very long, and heavy, and tying it correctly requires both skill and strength, which is why the dressing of a maiko is typically done with the assistance of a specialist dresser rather than independently. Collar, ties, bands, obi, each element adjusted with precision, each fold placed deliberately, each detail checked against the standard that the tradition requires. A maiko who appears in the tea house district is inspected by every eye that sees her, and every eye that sees her knows exactly what it is looking at and whether it is correct. The total time required to dress a maiko in full formal costume is approximately 1 hour. The total weight of what she is wearing when it is done is approximately 10 kilograms. And then she walks to the tea house in her tall wooden sandals on the uneven stone lanes of the Gion district. 1 hour to dress, 1 hour to walk carefully and beautifully to the destination, several hours of performing and entertaining and being graceful and present. 1 hour to walk home, 1 hour to undress, and then the wooden box. The supporting world. The geisha world does not exist in isolation. It exists within and because of an entire ecosystem of traditional Japanese craft industries that produce what the tradition requires. The kimono makers, the dyeing specialists, the weaving specialists, the embroidery specialists, the various artisans who contribute to the production of a single kimono, a process that can take months and that involves skills passed through generations of craft families in the traditional Japanese apprenticeship system that mirrors, in its structure and its duration and its demands, the geisha apprenticeship itself. The kanzashi makers, the craftspeople who produce the elaborate hair ornaments that change with each month, working in silk and tortoiseshell and lacquer and gold and the various other materials that the tradition requires. The seasonal kanzashi are specific objects, not generically beautiful decorations, but precisely coded markers of the month and the occasion, and making them correctly requires the same kind of knowledge that the geisha carries about the seasonal calendar and its meanings. The wig makers, because the senior geisha wear wigs rather than having their natural hair styled, and these wigs are made of human hair, constructed specifically for the individual geisha, maintained by the wig maker on a regular schedule of cleaning and restyling that keeps them in the condition that the professional standard requires. A single wig costs the equivalent of several months of ordinary salary. A geisha may have 3 or 4 for different occasions. The Yokobo craftsmen, the makers of the tall wooden platform sandals, carved and lacquered in the specific way that the tradition requires, sized for the individual wearer, produced in the workshops that have been making them for the Hanamachi for generations. The fabric shops of Nishijin, the textile district of Kyoto, that has been producing the woven silk fabrics of the traditional Japanese clothing industry for over 1,000 years, whose looms produce the complex patterns of the kimono in a process that requires weeks per garment and skills that are among the most technically demanding in the world of textile production. All of these industries, the wig makers and the kanzashi makers, and the okobo craftsmen, and the Nishijin weavers, and the various other artisans, depend in part on the geisha world for their survival. The geisha world is one of the remaining active markets for their products. When the geisha world contracts, these industries contract with it. When the geisha world maintains itself, these industries have a reason to maintain themselves. The preservation of the geisha tradition is not only the preservation of a performing art, it is the preservation of an entire connected ecosystem of traditional craft. The Okasan who runs her okiya in Gion is, in her own specific and limited way, a conservator of a far larger inheritance than the dance school in her hanamachi. The festivals, the punctuation of the year. The geisha year is structured by festivals in the way that most lives are structured by weeks and months. The festivals are the punctuation, the moments of intensification around which the ordinary days arrange themselves. The most important festivals for the Kyoto Hanamachi are the odori, the formal dance performances we have described. But there are many others, each with its own demands and its own pleasures. The New Year period, Shogatsu, is the most formal and most demanding of the year's celebratory periods. The Maiko visits every tea house and every house in the Hanamachi with the traditional New Year greeting, dressed in formal New Year costume, performing the specific New Year dance that belongs to this period. The rounds of visits take days. The greetings are formal and precise. The costume for New Year is among the most elaborate of the year. The Gion Matsuri, the great summer festival of Kyoto, one of the largest and most famous festivals in Japan, running through the entire month of July, fills the streets of Gion with processions and music and the specific summer energy of a city that knows how to celebrate. The Maiko and Geiko appear in the festival, in the elaborate summer kimono of the season, at the various events and gatherings that the festival generates. Hasaku, the first day of August by the old calendar, which falls in the modern calendar around the end of September, is the occasion on which the Maiko and Geiko of the Hanamachi make formal visits to all the tea houses and okiya and other establishments with which they have professional relationships, dressed in formal black tome-sewed kimono to offer the traditional seasonal greeting. Seeing the lanes of Gion on Hasaku morning filled with the black kimono-clad figures of the Maiko and Geiko moving in pairs and groups from door to door, the white of their collars bright against the black silk, is one of the specific beautiful things that the geisha world produces that exists nowhere else. The memorial services at the temples and shrines connected to the Hanamachi, the performances of traditional music and dance at the seasonal ceremonies, the specific gatherings and celebrations of the Flower Town community across the year, birthday celebrations, retirement parties for senior geisha, debut celebrations for new Maiko, each with its own rituals and its own requirements and its own place in the social calendar of the Hanamachi. The geisha world is, among other things, a calendar, a very precise, very beautiful, very demanding calendar in which every month and every season and every festival is an occasion for specific action, specific costume, specific performance. Living within this calendar requires the complete immersion in the tradition that the Okiya system provides. You cannot be in the geisha world and out of it simultaneously. The tradition asks for everything, and in return it gives a structure to life, a year with shape, a day with purpose, a role with meaning that the lives outside the Hanamachi, for all their greater freedom, do not always provide. The private life. Behind the white makeup and the elaborate costume and the ceremonial precision of the osashiki, the geisha has a private life. And this is the part of the story that is most thoroughly obscured by both the romantic idealization and the prurient misunderstanding that the geisha tradition tends to attract from the outside. The private life is, by all accounts, remarkably ordinary. The geisha watches television. She has opinions about food, specific opinions, because the palate that has been educated by years of the elaborate cuisine served at high-end tea houses is not a palate that is easily satisfied by convenience store onigiri, but the geisha eats convenience store onigiri anyway when she is hungry and there is nothing else. She has friendships with her fellow geisha in the Hanamachi, close friendships, built across years of training and performing and living in the specific proximity of the Okiya and the flower town. She has a phone, she uses social media with the specific caution that the geisha world's rules about public presentation require. The Japan Sumo Association's rules about wrestler conduct in public have their equivalent in the geisha world's understanding that the Maiko and Geiko are always, in public, representatives of the tradition. The phone goes in the kimono sleeve at the osashiki. She worries about things, about her performance, about her debts, about the future of the Hanamachi, about whether the training is going in the right direction, about the specific interpersonal dynamics of the Okiya and the Hanamachi community that are, in a small closed world, as complicated and as absorbing as the interpersonal dynamics of any small community. She laughs. She has a sense of humour, and the geisha's sense of humour, shaped by years of training in the conversational arts and honed by the daily professional requirement to find the register of wit that the specific room requires, is typically sharp and dry and occasionally unexpected. She is tired sometimes. The schedule of the geisha, the morning training that begins at 10 and runs through the day, the evening osashiki that may last until midnight or later, the social obligations of the Hanamachi community that fill the spaces between, is a schedule that does not leave a great deal of room for the passive, unstructured time that most people's lives include. The geisha is almost always doing something. When she is not training, she is performing. When she is not performing, she is preparing. When she is not preparing, she is fulfilling the social obligations of the Flower Town community. There is very little room for nothing. The wooden box at the end of the evening is not only a hairstyle preservation device, it is the only truly private moment of the day. The moment when the door is closed and the makeup is off and the costume is folded and no one is watching and no one is requiring anything, and the body can simply be a body in a room in the dark, asleep, or trying, on a wooden box. The daily schedule, hour by hour. The day of a Maiko begins, unlike the sumo wrestler's day, at a relatively civilized hour, 8 in the morning. She wakes, changes clothes, waters the Okia's garden. There is almost always a small garden, even in the narrow lots of the Hanamachi, because the Japanese instinct for garden, even in compressed urban space, is deep and persistent. And eats breakfast, a real breakfast, with a normal plate and normal food, and the ordinary morning texture of a person who is not a sumo wrestler. By 10 she is in her training dress, a simpler kimono than she wears for the ozashiki, functional and less elaborate, appropriate for a day of physical practice, and attending the first lesson of the day at the kaburenjo. Dance, typically. The dance school is the anchor of the morning, the foundation around which the rest of the day's training is arranged. The dance lesson runs until noon or so. Then there may be shamisen instruction, then perhaps tea ceremony, then flower arranging. The specific schedule varies by the stage of training and the upcoming performance requirements. In the weeks before the odori, the dance rehearsals expand to take over most of the day. In ordinary training periods, the arts lessons alternate through the afternoon in a rotation that ensures all the skills are regularly practiced without any of them being neglected. Between lessons, the Maiko attends to the social obligations of the Hanamachi. She makes her calls, she visits the tea houses and the other okiya to maintain the relationships that the flower town's social world requires. She is introduced to the new clients that the tea houses are cultivating. She practices the conversational arts in the real-world laboratory of these visits, in the same way she practices the dance in the formal laboratory of the dance school. By mid-afternoon, she returns to the okiya to prepare for the evening. The preparation for the ozashiki is itself a substantial undertaking. The dressing process alone takes an hour. The hair must be arranged, the makeup applied, the collar positioned, the obi tied, the kanzashi selected for the occasion, and the month. By 6 or 7 in the evening, she is ready. She walks to the tea house, the click of the okobo on the evening stone, the trailing hem of the kimono, the kanzashi catching the last of the winter light or the warmth of the summer evening, and the professional evening begins. The ozashiki may last 2 hours, it may last 3. On long evenings when the guests are enjoying themselves and the flower money is flowing, and no one has any particular reason to go home, it may last longer. The geisha reads the room and adjusts. She does not watch the clock. She watches the guests. After the ozashiki, she walks home. The okobo on the empty stone lanes. The lantern still burning. The hanamachi quiet around her in the late evening. She undresses. She removes the makeup. She lies down on the wooden box. The famous geisha, the names that history kept. The geisha world is not a world that produces celebrities in the modern sense. The hanamachi values discretion. The relationships between the geisha and her clients are private by design and by tradition. The names of the guests are not announced. The conversations of the ozashiki are not shared with the outside world. But some geisha have become famous despite this, or perhaps because of the combination of this discretion and the extraordinary quality of their art. Okichi of Shimoda, not technically a Kyoto Hanamachi geisha, but a geisha nonetheless, became famous and then tragic when she was required by the Japanese government to serve as the companion to the American consul Townsend Harris in the 1850s, at the beginning of Japan's forced opening to foreign contact. Her story, a geisha drawn into the impossible position of mediating between her country and the foreign power that was demanding its opening, is one of the most poignant of the entire Edo to Meiji transition, and her name has been remembered in Japan as a symbol of a particular kind of sacrifice. Manryu, who worked in the Gion Hanamachi in the Meiji era, was celebrated across Japan for the quality of her dance and the beauty of her presence. She became one of the first geisha to be widely photographed, and the photographs, formal, composed, her elaborate costume exquisitely adjusted, circulated as a kind of celebrity image in a period before celebrity, as the modern world understands it, had fully come into existence. Sada Yako, a geisha from the Tokyo geisha world, who travelled to Europe and America in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as part of a theatrical touring company, became the first Japanese woman to perform on the Western stage and created a sensation. The Western audiences who saw her perform had never seen anything like the physical expressiveness of Japanese classical dance, the quality of presence that the geisha training produces, the specific way the body moves when it has been trained in the Inoue or equivalent school for years. She was reviewed ecstatically. She was painted by European artists. She was written about as though a new form of beauty had been discovered, which in a sense it had. The specific beauty of the geisha arts had arrived in Europe and found an audience completely unprepared for what it was seeing. These famous names are exceptions. The geisha world is not a world that seeks fame. It is a world that seeks quality. The most accomplished geisha working today are not widely known outside the Hanamachi and a small community of dedicated devotees. They practice their art in the quiet rooms of the tea houses of Gion for the clients who have been introduced in the incense time that the tradition measures. They do not need the world to know their names. The clients who matter know them. The tradition knows them. That is enough. The men who sat across the shamisen, the clients of the geisha world, the people who book the ozashiki, who sit across the low table while the shamisen is played, who engage in the conversation and the party games and the evening of flower money, are worth a moment, because they are part of the story even when they are the less visible part. The traditional client of the Gion tea house was, and remains, a wealthy and educated man, a businessman, a politician, a professional of some kind, someone whose circumstances put both the cost of the ozashiki within reach and the value of what the ozashiki offers within his comprehension. What is that value? What does a man pay several $1,000s for in an ozashiki in Gion? Not the food, though the food is excellent, not the drinks, though the drinks are good. Not simply the performance, though the performance is extraordinary. He pays for the specific quality of presence that the geisha brings to the room, the genuine attention, the intelligent engagement, the conversation that is neither flattery nor transaction, but something more like what the Japanese call ma, the meaningful space between, where real communication happens. In a world where most interactions are hurried and functional and partially attentive, where the people across the table are checking their phones and thinking about their next meeting and present in the room only in the most approximate sense, the geisha is completely and specifically there, with this person, in this room, in this moment. The years of training have built this quality. The tea ceremony has trained her in it. The Minarai month of watching and not speaking has trained her in it. The Shikomi year of cleaning and waiting has, in its own way, trained her in it. The man across the shamisen knows this. He feels it. It is the thing he is paying for, and the thing that makes the price seem to him reasonable. This is not a simple or uncomplicated dynamic. The geisha's presence is professional. The warmth is trained. The attention, however genuine it may feel, is a skill. The client who forgets this, who mistakes professional intimacy for personal intimacy, is making an error that the geisha world has seen many times, and that the geisha herself is trained to manage with the specific grace of someone who has anticipated this possibility and knows exactly what to do about it. The relationship between the geisha and her client is real. It is sustained across years of regular ozashiki. It involves genuine mutual regard, genuine conversation, genuine shared history of many evenings in the quiet room with the shamisen and the incense. But it is also bounded. It is also specific. It is also, fundamentally, a professional relationship shaped by the traditions and the rules of the flower town. The geisha knows this. The best clients know this. The relationship works when both parties understand what it is and honour that understanding. This is, of course, a description of how many human relationships work. The geisha world simply makes it more explicit. The unusual facts that nobody tells you. We have covered the wooden box and the 10-kilogram kimono and the incense time, but there are more unusual facts in the geisha world, and they are worth collecting together because each one adds another dimension to the extraordinary reality of this tradition. The Maiko's collar changes colour through her career. When she first debuts, the collar of her nakajuban is red, a specific, vivid red that signals her status as a young and junior Maiko. As she advances through her apprenticeship, the red is gradually, incrementally replaced with embroidery in white. By the time she is ready to graduate to full geisha status, the collar is entirely white. This is why the graduation is called iriage, turning the collar. The collar changing is not done all at once. It is done gradually, in stages, over months and years, tracking the progression of the training. A person who knows the geisha world can look at the collar of a Maiko and determine approximately how far through her apprenticeship she is. The collar is a public record of private development. There is a specific time of day when seeing a Maiko in the lanes of Gion is most likely. Late afternoon, around 4 to 6 in the evening, is when the Maiko walks from the okiya to her first engagement of the evening. In the morning she is in her training clothes at the dance school. At midnight she is inside the tea house or walking home. But in the late afternoon, in the brief window between dressing and departing, the Maiko's in the lanes in full costume. In recent years, the Maiko watching phenomenon has become a significant tourist activity in Kyoto, and the lanes of Gion in the late afternoon are sometimes crowded with camera-carrying tourists hoping to photograph a Maiko. The Gion community has responded to this with the specific patience of people who are used to being watched but have limits. There are signs in the Hanamachi asking visitors not to photograph the Maiko and Geiko without permission, not to pursue them through the lanes, not to touch their costumes. The requests are sometimes observed and sometimes not. The Maiko, who is running slightly late for an ozashiki and finds her path blocked by a group of tourists wanting photographs, is not in the film version of this situation. She is in the real version, and the real version has a schedule. There is a specific word in the geisha vocabulary for a client who has attended his first ozashiki, ichigen-san, which we have already encountered in the context of the tea house's no first-time customers policy. The word carries no judgment. It simply means what it means, a first-time person. But the geisha world's insistence on introduction before admission means that the ichigen-san exists in theory, but almost never in practice. If you are in the room, you have already been introduced. The party games of the ozashiki, which we have described, are played for the specific purpose of creating laughter and dissolving formality. And the geisha is very good at engineering both. There is a phrase in Japanese, nomunication, a portmanteau of nomu, to drink, and communication, that describes the specific social bonding that happens over shared food and drink in Japan. The ozashiki is nomunication at its most refined and most deliberate. A full set of maiko accessories, the kimono, the obi, the kanzashi, the okobo, the various underlayers and accessories, can cost the equivalent of a luxury car. A set sufficient for a complete year of seasonal changes can cost considerably more. This is why the okiya system exists, and why the debt accumulated during training is so significant. Without the institutional support of the okiya, the financial barrier to entry would be completely prohibitive. The geisha of Pontocho Hanamachi are considered by some connoisseurs of the tradition to have a particularly refined and particularly subtle style of entertainment. More restrained, more focused on conversation, and less on performance, reflecting the specific character of the narrow lane and its small tea houses. The geisha of Gionkobu are considered to have the most prestigious and most formal style, the one most associated with the historical centre of the Kyoto geisha tradition. The geisha of Kamishichiken, the oldest district, have their own reputation for a particular quality of elegant age. The Hanamachi has existed long enough that its style carries the specific weight of accumulated history. These distinctions are real, but they are subtle, and to perceive them requires exactly the kind of long and repeated exposure to the tradition that the introduction-only system of the tea houses is designed to cultivate. The modern geisha, the question of survival. The 1,000 geisha who practice today are doing something that requires, among other things, a very clear-eyed relationship with the question of whether what they are doing will outlast them. The Japan Sumo Association, faced with the challenge of maintaining a centuries-old tradition in a changed world, has responded with a combination of strict conservatism. The rules of the stable and the ring and the ceremony are maintained with great fidelity and careful openness. The international recruitment of wrestlers, the digital media presence, the cultivation of a global fan base. The sumo world is still recognizably itself, and it is also engaging with the contemporary world in ways that help it survive. The Hanamachi communities have made similar calculations. The formal odori performances are ticketed events open to the public. The Kenban, the geisha registries, have established processes for tourists to attend ozashiki in limited structured formats that do not require the traditional introduction. Some maiko and geiko have established social media presences, carefully managed, that allow a broader public glimpse of the Flower Town world without violating the discretion that the tradition requires. There is ongoing internal discussion in the Hanamachi communities about how much change is compatible with the preservation of what is essential, Some things can change without the tradition losing its identity. The materials used for the kanzashi, the specific kimono patterns available, the channels through which information about the tradition reaches the outside world. Other things cannot change without the tradition becoming something different. The quality of the training, the duration of the apprenticeship, the standards that the dance schools and the music teachers and the tea ceremony masters hold their students to, the relationship between the maiko and the wani-san, the system of introduction that maintains the intimacy of the ozashiki. The Hanamachi communities know the difference. They make the distinction carefully and continuously, because the distinction is the thing that determines whether the tradition survives as itself or survives as a simulation of itself, which is a different thing entirely and not what any of them are trying to preserve. The Oka-san who takes on a new trainee today is making a bet. She is betting that the years she will invest in training this young woman will produce a geisha who can find sufficient clientele to sustain her career and the okiya's finances. She is betting that the tea houses will still be there, and the clients will still be there, and the tradition will still be valued enough to support it. She is betting that the world will continue to have room for the specific kind of beauty that the geisha world produces. These are not certain bets. The Oka-san makes them anyway, because someone has to. Because if everyone waits for certainty before making the investment, the tradition ends not with a decision, but with an absence. No one making the investment, no one training the next generation, no one carrying the shamisen to the tea house on the winter evening, until eventually the evening arrives with no one in it, and the lanterns are not lit and the incense does not burn. This is the danger that the 1,000 remaining geisha are collectively holding at bay by continuing to do what they do every morning at the dance school, every evening at the ozashiki, every night on the wooden box, holding the tradition up by the daily practice of it, which is in the end the only way any tradition is held up. Not by declaration or by monument or by the official recognition of cultural heritage status, though the geisha tradition has all of these. By practice, by the daily, demanding, beautiful, unglamorous practice of people who have chosen this specific and ancient way of being in the world and who continue to choose it every morning when the training begins and every evening when the kimono goes on and every night when the wooden box is waiting. The tradition is the practice is the people. The people are still here, for now, and for now is all anyone ever has. The night in the Hanamachi. It is late in the Hanamachi, later than most of the city. The restaurants of Gion have closed. The tourists who filled the lanes in the late afternoon have long since made their way back to their hotels. The stone lanes are empty, except for the occasional figure, a maiko walking home from a late ozashiki, her okobo muffled by the wooden sandal's contact with the stone, in the specific way of someone who has learned to walk in platform shoes, with the same naturalness that most people walk in flat ones. The lanterns are still burning at the tea house doors. They burn until the last guest has left, and then they are extinguished one by one, and the Hanamachi settles into the quiet that is its own version of the ordinary city's quiet. The same silence but differently textured, carrying within it the 300-year weight of all the evenings that have preceded this one. In the okiya, The Okasan reviews the evening. She knows how each of her geisha performed. She knows whether the Maiko who attended her first osashiki said the right thing at the right moment, or a slightly wrong thing at a slightly wrong moment, and what the lesson for tomorrow is, and how to convey it without discouraging the young woman who tried her best and will try better tomorrow. She turns off the light. The okiya is quiet. In the corner of her room, the Maiko's wooden box waits. The Maiko comes home. She undresses with the help of whoever is still awake to assist her. She removes the makeup. She changes into the sleeping garments that will not disturb the hairstyle in the night. She looks at the wooden box. She lies down on it. The hairstyle is preserved. The room is dark. The hanamachi is quiet. Outside, the lanterns are going out one by one. And somewhere in the silence, if the night is very still, and one listens very carefully, there is the sound of the shamisen, not actually there, not actually playing, but present in the way that the residue of beauty is always present in the spaces where beauty has been. The specific resonance of a tradition that has been filling these lanes with music for 300 years, and that tonight has filled them again. Tomorrow the dance class begins at 10. The wooden box holds its patient vigil. The tradition continues, as it always has, as it will for as long as the people within it choose to make it so, which is, in the end, the only promise any tradition can make, and the only promise that matters. What has been preserved? The geisha world has preserved things that would otherwise be lost. This is not a trivial statement. It is a specific and important one. The dance traditions of the Inoue school have been maintained in the Gion Hanamachi because the Maiko learn them every day and the senior Geiko perform them every year, and the teachers teach them to the next generation because the generation before taught them, and the generation before that. Without this chain of transmission, human to human, body to body, through the specific physical demonstration and correction that classical dance requires, the Inoue style would exist only in the historical record, not in the bodies of living practitioners. The specific construction techniques for the kanzashi, the specific weaving patterns of certain nishijin fabrics, the specific tuning and playing techniques for certain traditional shamisen styles, the specific seasonal protocols of the Hanamachi calendar, the specific forms of address and greeting that the Flower Town community uses within itself, a vocabulary that has developed across 3 centuries and that encodes, in its forms and its formulas, the whole social structure of the geisha world. All of this is preserved because the geisha world continues. All of it would be at risk, not immediately, not catastrophically, but incrementally and then suddenly, if the world stopped. The geisha tradition is, among other things, a living archive, a human-embodied archive of practices and knowledge and aesthetic traditions that exist fully and functionally only in the people who practice them. The Maiko who bows at the door of the tea house on Hasaku morning in her black tome sewed is not performing a museum piece. She is doing something that is alive, that requires her fully, that is transmitted to her from a chain of predecessors and will be transmitted by her to successors if the chain holds. Whether the chain holds depends on whether enough young women continue to choose this life, whether enough Okasan continue to run Okiya, whether the tea houses of the Hanamachi continue to attract the clientele that makes the Ozashiki economically viable. Whether the craft industries that support the tradition continue to find enough skilled practitioners to maintain the quality of what they produce. These are not guaranteed things. They are fragile things. They are maintained by the daily choices of specific people in specific places to continue doing what they and their predecessors have always done. The 80,000 geisha of the 1920s did not know they were living at the peak. They simply lived. The 1,000 of today know exactly where they are, and they continue anyway, because the tradition is worth it, because the art is worth it, because the wooden box and the 10-kilogram kimono and the year of cleaning and the incense time and the flower money and the wansen ceremony and the kanzashi that change with every month are all part of something that is beautiful and demanding and ancient and alive and worth preserving as long as it can be preserved. The click of the okobo on the stone lanes of Gion, the warmth of the lanterns in the winter evening, the sound of a shamisen from behind a latticed window. These are not small things. They are exactly the size they appear to be, and they are worth every sleepless night on the wooden box. The language of the Hanamachi. The geisha world has its own language. Not a different language from Japanese. The people in the Hanamachi speak Japanese, but a vocabulary, a set of specific words and phrases that belong to the flower town and that mark the people who use them as insiders. The word for the tea house is ochaya, honourable tea place. The word for the geisha's engagement fee is hanadai, flower money, as we've established. The word for the senior geisha in Kyoto's Hanamachi is not geisha at all, but geiko, a Kyoto word that carries its own specific connotation, slightly warmer and slightly more intimate than the more widely known word. The Okasan calls her Maiko and Geiko by their professional names. The names that the Wane-san gave them. The names derived from the older sister's own name. These names are used in the Hanamachi the way names are used in families, naturally, unself-consciously, as the simple and obvious way to refer to the person. The protocol of address within the Okiya, how a junior Maiko addresses a senior Geiko, how a Maiko addresses the Okasan, how the Okasan addresses her practitioners, is precise and reflects the hierarchy of the house. Getting the address right signals that one knows one's place in the system. Getting it wrong signals the opposite. There is a specific phrase used when a Maiko makes a mistake in the Osashiki or in training. Not a rebuke exactly, but a correction, delivered in the specific tone that the Hanamachi uses for corrections, which is direct without being harsh, clear without being unkind, and immediately understood by everyone who hears it as both a correction and an instruction for what to do differently. The Maiko bows her head. She acknowledges the correction. She will not make the same mistake again, or at least she will make it less. The language of the seasonal greetings, the specific phrases used at New Year, at Hasaku, at the various formal occasions of the Hanamachi year, is part of what the Shikomi learns in her first year. The greetings are not variable, they are not improvised, they are specific formulas, used at specific occasions, in specific tones, with specific accompanying gestures. Learning them is part of learning the Hanamachi, the way learning the alphabet is part of learning to read. All of this, the vocabulary, the protocol of address, the seasonal greetings, the specific phrases of correction and acknowledgement, constitutes a kind of second language, spoken within the first language, that the Maiko gradually acquires over her years of training. By the time she's a full Geiko, this language is as natural to her as breathing. By the time she's a senior Geiko, she teaches it to the new Maiko without thinking about teaching it, the way anyone teaches their native language, by example, by correction, by the daily use of it in the world where it belongs. The senses of the Hana-machi, the Geisha world, is a world of extraordinary sensory richness, and the senses it engages are part of what makes it so distinctive and so specific a tradition. The smell. The Hana-machi smells of things that the modern world has largely lost. Incense and wood in the specific combination of lacquer and silk that the traditional Japanese interior produces, and the cold, clean smell of stone lanes in winter, and the warm floral smell of summer evening, and the specific perfume of the pomade used to dress the Maiko's hair, which is scented with camellia oil and is one of the signature smells of the Hana-machi, recognizable immediately to anyone who has been there. The sound. The click of the okobo on the stone. That specific two-part sound, the wooden base and the wooden heel, that announces the presence of a Maiko before she comes into view. The sound of the shamisen through a latticed window. Not the full performance sound of the ozashiki, but the practicing sound, slightly imperfect. Finding the phrase, and losing it and finding it again. The sound of wooden screens sliding on their tracks in the traditional architecture of the tea houses and the okiya. The sound of a formal greeting delivered at a door. The specific cadence of the seasonal phrase, the bow that follows it, the acknowledgement that receives it, the sight, the white of the collar against the black of the formal kimono on Hasaku morning, the blue-green of the Inoue dance costume against the pale wood of the Kaburenjo stage, the red of the first-year Maiko's collar against the white of the winter lane, the gold of the kanzashi catching the lantern light on a winter evening, the pink of the cherry blossom seasoned silk against the pink of actual cherry blossoms in the gion trees, the touch, the specific weight and texture of high-quality silk, the cool smoothness of it, the way it holds the warmth of the body beneath it, the specific drape of a well-made obi against the hand, the warmth of the ceramic tea bowl in both hands during the ceremony, the resonance of the shamisen strings under the fingers of the left hand, the resistance of the takamakura wooden box against the back of the neck every night, the body accommodating itself to what it cannot change. These are the senses of the Hana-machi, the specific, accumulated, daily sensory experience of living within a tradition that has attended very carefully to the beauty of the physical world for 300 years, and has developed, through that attention, a setting of extraordinary richness. The modern city is all around. The bullet trains and the convenience stores, and the neon, and the noise of the 21st century Japanese urban environment. It is all there, a few streets away, in full force. But in the lanes of the Hana-machi, the lanterns make their own light, and the shamisen makes its own music, and the wooden box waits in its quiet corner, and the tradition continues, as it has, as it will, for as long as someone chooses to continue it, which is everything, which is the whole story, the whole extraordinary, demanding, beautiful, unusual, specific, ancient, living story of the person of art in the flower town, under the winter lanterns, on the wooden box, playing the shamisen, for the incense time, for the flower money, for 300 years, and still going. The graduation, turning the collar, the moment when a Maiko becomes a full Geiko. A full Geisha is called erikai, the collar turning. And it is, for the young woman in question, one of the most significant moments of her entire career. The erikai follows years of apprenticeship. The exact timing varies. Some Maiko graduate after 3 years, some after 5, some after longer. The decision is made by the Okasan in consultation with the senior figures of the Hanamachi, based on the readiness of the individual, her technical skill, her social maturity, her professional development, the assessment of whether she is ready to function without the scaffolding of the Maiko apprenticeship. The preparations for the erikai begin weeks before. The senior Geiko, who will become her one-son, if this is a new one-son relationship, which it may be, as a Maiko may have a different one-son as a full Geiko than she had as an apprentice, is confirmed. The date is set. The tea houses and the okiya of the Hanamachi are informed. The specific elements of the new professional identity are established. The most significant of these is the name. As a Maiko, the young woman has been using a Maiko name, typically a name with a specific element derived from her one-son's name. As a full Geiko, she may take a different name, a name that belongs to her full professional identity, that she will carry for the rest of her career. That will become the name by which the Hanamachi knows her, and the clients know her, and the tea houses book her. The name of a Geiko is chosen with care. It is a professional identity, a brand in the oldest sense of the word, a mark of quality and of specific character that the market of the Hanamachi will associate with everything she does from this point on. The Okasan has opinions about the name. The One-san has opinions. The Geiko herself may have opinions. The negotiation of the name is part of the preparation. On the day of the erikai, the new Geiko dresses in a white kimono, the white that marks transition and new beginning in the Japanese ceremonial vocabulary, the white of the wedding kimono and the white of the funeral kimono, the colour that Japanese aesthetics have associated with the threshold between states. She visits the tea houses and the okiya of the Hanamachi in the same formal round of visits that she made at her debut as a Maiko, but now in the opposite direction, not presenting herself as a newcomer asking to be received, but presenting herself as a full professional announcing her arrival at a new stage. The Darari no Obi, the long dangling Obi panel that's been the most visually distinctive marker of her Maiko status, is no longer worn. She ties her obi in the standard adult woman's way. This single change, visible to everyone in the Hanamachi, signals the transition as clearly as the white kimono and the new name combined. The collar is white. It has been white for some time. The red of the early Maiko years is long gone. But now the white collar carries a different meaning. It is the collar of a professional, of a full Geiko, of someone who has completed the apprenticeship and earned the right to the title. She bows at the tea house doors. She accepts the congratulations. She begins the next chapter of the career that the apprenticeship has been preparing her for. Tonight, she will sleep on a softer surface than she has slept on in years. The wooden box is for the Maiko. The full Geiko has earned her pillow. The dance. What is actually being expressed? We have described dance training extensively, but we have not described the dance itself. What it actually looks like, what it is actually doing, what an audience actually experiences when they watch a Geisha of the Inoue school perform a classical Kyoto dance. The first thing an uninitiated observer notices is the slowness. The dance is slow in a way that contemporary Western performance art rarely is. The movements are deliberate, extended, performed at a pace that gives the audience time to receive each position before the next one begins. There is none of the rapid pace of modern dance or pop performance, no speed for its own sake, no energy expressed through velocity. What there is instead is weight. Each movement has weight, a quality of gravity and intentionality that makes even the simplest gesture seem significant. The lifting of a fan, the turning of the head, the specific way the sleeve of the kimono trails behind the arm as it extends. Each of these is performed with the full attention of the performer and invites the full attention of the audience. The second thing an uninitiated observer notices is the face. The dancer's face is not expressive in the Western theatrical sense. It does not contort into the exaggerated expressions of emotion that Western audiences are trained to expect as the signal of an actor or dancer fully committed to the material. It is still, composed, present without projection. The emotion that the dance expresses is not in the face. It is in the body, in the weight and quality of the movement, in the relationship between the dancer and the music and the space. This requires an adjustment in how one watches. The uninitiated observer who is looking for the emotion in the face will not find it there. The observer who has learned to watch differently, who has learned to receive the whole body, the whole movement, the whole relationship between the dancer and her world, will find the emotion everywhere. The third thing that becomes apparent over time is the precision. Every position in the Inoue school dance has a name and a specific correct execution. The angle of the head, the height of the hand, the degree of the bow. These are not approximations or guidelines. They are standards maintained across the generations of the school, transmitted from teacher to student through the specific physical demonstration and correction that we have described. When a senior Geisha of the Inoue school dances, she is dancing in a lineage, a direct physical connection, through the chain of teachers and students to the people who danced this dance before her and who will dance it after her. This is what the dance actually is. Not a performance in the modern sense, not an individual self-expression delivered to an audience, a transmission, a carrying forward of something that was trusted to the dancer by those who came before, and that she is now holding carefully and precisely for those who will come after. The fan in her hand has been held by many hands before hers. The okobo on the stage have been worn by many feet before hers. The lanterns that light the performance hall have been burning for these dances for a very long time. She dances. The tradition continues. The specific things that are surprising. Let us collect, before we leave the Hanamachi, the specific surprising things that do not fit neatly into any other category, but that are worth knowing because they add texture and dimension to the picture. The Maiko's okobo, the tall wooden sandals, make a specific sound that is different from the sound of regular wooden sandals. The hollowed bass creates a bell-like resonance with each step that is immediately recognisable to anyone who knows it, and that carries further in the winter night air than a solid sole would. The sound has been used as a plot device in Japanese fiction, the approach of the Maiko announced by her footsteps before she comes into view. In the Hanamachi, the residents have been hearing this sound for generations. The kanzashi, the hair ornaments of the cherry blossom month, are among the most elaborate and the most photographed of the entire year. They are also seasonal in the most literal sense. They are made to look like cherry blossoms, and cherry blossom season lasts approximately 2 weeks. The kanzashi that the craftsmen spend weeks making are worn for 2 weeks and then put away for another year. The ephemeral beauty of the cherry blossom is reproduced in the ephemeral wearing of its kanzashi representation. The geisha world has its own hierarchy of tea houses. Some tea houses are old and prestigious. Some are newer and less established. The geisha who performs at the most prestigious tea houses for the most established clients is at the top of her professional world. The geisha who is still building her clientele performs at less prestigious establishments while she develops the relationships and the reputation that will eventually open the better doors. The quality of a geisha's conversation is considered as important as the quality of her dance. A geisha who dances beautifully but bores her clients will not have a long career. A geisha who can dance adequately but who makes every person in the room feel genuinely engaged and genuinely entertained will always find engagements. The arts are the medium. The presence is the product. This distinction is understood by everyone in the flower town and influences everything about how the training is designed. There is a specific flower associated with the geisha world that is not the cherry blossom, despite what most people would guess. It is the camellia, tsubaki, a flower that blooms in winter and that shares with the geisha tradition a quality of beauty that emerges precisely in the difficult season, that is present and vivid when everything else is bare. The camellia oil is the oil used to dress the Maiko's hair. The camellia is the flower of the Hanamachi winter. The geisha world measures itself against its own history. The Oka-san who trains today's Maiko knows the names and the stories of the geisha who trained in her okiya 100 years ago. The dance school preserves records of the performances of previous generations. The community of the Hanamachi carries its own history in the same way that families carry family history, not as academic knowledge, but as living context, as the background against which the present is understood. This is, ultimately, what the geisha world is for its participants. Not a job, not a performance, a context, a way of being in the world that is ancient and specific and demanding and beautiful, and that gives the people within it something that is increasingly rare in the modern world, a place to belong to, a tradition to carry, a practice that connects the daily and the present to the historical and the enduring. The Maiko on her wooden box in the okiya in Gion is connected, through the chain of the tradition, to the Maiko who slept on a wooden box in the same district 200 years ago, the same Hanamachi, the same craft, the same discipline, the same wooden box or one very like it, 200 years apart, the same. This is what traditions do. This is why they are worth having. This is why the geisha world, imperfect, endangered, ancient, alive, is worth 3 hours of a quiet night. And this is why the pillow, when you finally lie your head on it at the end of these 3 hours, will feel exactly as soft as it deserves to feel. Extraordinarily soft, magnificently ordinary, completely and specifically yours. The Maiko's thoughts. If a Maiko could tell us what she thinks about, in the quiet moments of her day, in the brief spaces between lessons, in the walk between the okiya and the dance school, in the first moments of lying down on the wooden box before sleep takes her, what would she say? She would probably not say what the romantic version of the story expects. She would not say that she thinks about the ancient tradition she's carrying forward, or the beauty of the art, or the privilege of belonging to something 300 years old. These things are real to her, but they are background. They are the context, not the content of the daily thought. She would say she thinks about the dance phrase that still is not quite right, the specific transition between two positions in the piece she is preparing for the odori, where the weight transfer happens, a fraction of a moment too early, and the teacher has mentioned it 3 times, and she knows it is still not right, and she runs through it in her mind, in the break between shamisen practice and tea ceremony. Not deliberately, but automatically. The way musicians find themselves fingering difficult passages on the table during dinner. She would say she thinks about the client at last night's ozashiki, who laughed at exactly the right moment in the game and whose laugh was very specific and very genuine, and who seemed, for a moment, to be completely present in the room in a way that most people are not, and how that moment of genuine presence on his side responded to her genuine presence on hers, and how the room felt different for about 30 seconds. She would say she thinks about the wooden box, not constantly, but with a specific quality of awareness that comes from having slept on it for 3 years. The knowledge of it that the body carries, the specific adaptation that has happened in the neck and shoulders that makes the wooden box almost normal now. Though not quite normal, never quite normal, always still the wooden box. She would say she thinks about her one son, who is performing at a major tea house tonight, and who is, by any measure, extraordinary, who moves through the osashiki with a quality of ease and authority and warmth that the Maiko watches and cannot yet fully imitate, and is trying to understand, not by analysis, but by attention, by the same Minarai quality of watching that she practiced in her first month of the flower town. She would say she thinks about the pillow she will have when she graduates, not constantly, but sometimes, on the wooden box. She would say all of this, and it would sound ordinary. It would sound like the thoughts of a young woman in a demanding job, in a specific and unusual professional world, navigating the daily reality of something she has chosen and is committed to, and finds genuinely difficult and genuinely worth it. Because that is what it is, under the white makeup, under the 10-kilogram kimono, under the elaborate kanzashi of the appropriate month, under all of it. That is what it is, a person. Trying, getting it slightly wrong, trying again, getting it a little less wrong, again, until one day it is right, and the teacher does not correct it, and the tradition has been transmitted. One more time, by one more person, into the future, which is all any tradition ever asks of anyone, to carry it forward, for one more day, one more dance class, one more ozashiki, one more night on the wooden box, until the day it is someone else's turn, and the Maiko lies down on her regular pillow, and the tradition continues, without her, in the next person who chose it, who is also right now somewhere in the Hanamachi, lying on a wooden box, thinking about the dance phrase that is still not quite right, and tomorrow's lesson, and the pillow that is coming. Eventually, the tradition takes care of the rest. The wind down. And so we come, at last, to the end of the evening in the flower town. The city of Kyoto is quiet around the Hanamachi, the old capital, the city that was Japan's imperial capital for over 1,000 years, the city that escaped the bombing of the Second World War and therefore still contains its ancient temples and shrines and wooden districts in a way that Tokyo and Osaka and Hiroshima and Nagasaki do not, is settling into its nighttime quiet. The temples are dark. The gardens are dark. The great torii gates of the shrines stand in the darkness that has always surrounded them, older than almost everything else that remains of the city, marking the threshold between the ordinary and the sacred in the way they have always marked it. And in the Hanamachi, the lanterns are going out, one by one, as the last guests leave the last tea houses and the last Maiko makes her way home through the last empty lane. The lanterns are extinguished. The warm golden light that has been the visual signature of the Flower Town district since the Edo period fades lantern by lantern until the lanes are lit only by the ordinary streetlights of a 21st century Japanese city. And in the Okiya, the Okasan makes her final rounds. She checks that the house is secure. She checks that the trainees are in. She checks the schedule for tomorrow, the dance class at 10, the shamisen lesson in the afternoon, the ozashiki in the evening that 2 of her geiko will attend. She turns off the last light. The Okiya is quiet. In the corner of her room, the Maiko's wooden box waits with the patient immobility of something that does not need to hurry because it knows it will be needed. The Maiko comes home. She undresses. She removes the makeup. She allows herself briefly the ordinary face of a young woman at the end of a long day. The face that the white makeup covers for professional hours and that exists fully and privately in the hours in between. She does not look in the mirror. She goes to bed. On the wooden box, the hairstyle is preserved. The night is quiet. Outside, the empty lanes of Gion carry the residue of the evening, the warmth of the incense that burned in the tea houses, the specific acoustic memory of the shamisen in the wooden rooms, the click of the okobo on the stone that has faded now into silence. The Hanamachi sleeps. The tradition rests, and tomorrow it will begin again. The dance class at 10, the tea ceremony in the afternoon, the careful dressing for the evening, the click of the okobo on the evening stone, the lanterns lit one by one as the darkness comes, the incense burning its slow measurement of flower money time, the shamisen playing its ancient music in the warm light of the tea house room, as it has, as it will, for as long as the people within it choose to continue, which is everything, which is the whole extraordinary story. The ozashiki has concluded. The guests have bowed their farewells and made their way out into the night lanes of Gion. The incense has burned through its last measure of time. The final notes of the shamisen have faded into the room and been absorbed by the silence. The geisha returns to the okiya. The elaborate kimono comes off, undone by the dresser or by the senior sister, in the reversal of the process that constructed it 2 hours ago. The kanzashi are removed from the hair. The white makeup is cleaned carefully away. The specific cleansing products of the geisha world removing the oshiroi without damage to the skin beneath. Without the costume and the makeup, the geisha is a woman in a dressing gown. A woman who is probably tired, who has been gracious and present and engaged for several hours, and who is now, in the privacy of the okiya, simply a person at the end of a long day. In the corner of her room, the wooden box sits waiting. She looks at it with the particular expression of someone who has slept on a wooden box for years and has made a peace with this that is not exactly acceptance, but is something more functional than resentment. She takes off the dressing gown. She lies down. She places the back of her neck on the wooden support. The elaborate hairstyle is preserved. The room is quiet. Outside, the lanes of Gion are almost empty. The stone-paved streets that rang all evening with the click of Okobo sandals are silent now. The lanterns still glow softly at the tea-house doors, but the doors are closed and the guests have gone, and the evening is over. Somewhere in the Hanamachi, a shamisen is being put away in its case. Somewhere, a set of kanzashi is being wrapped in paper and stored for tomorrow's wearing. Somewhere, the okasan of an okiya is reviewing the evening. What went well, what needed work, what the maiko, who accompanied the senior geisha to her first ozashiki, said to the guest in the moment when the senior geisha's attention was elsewhere, and whether it was the right thing to say, or whether it will need to be discussed tomorrow. Tomorrow the dance class begins at 10. Tomorrow the wooden box will have done its work for another night, and the hairstyle will be intact for another day. Tomorrow the incense will burn again, and the flower money will be counted, and the seasons will continue their turning, and the kanzashi for next month are already at the shop being made by the craftsman who has been making kanzashi for this okiya for 30 years. The tradition continues, as it has, as it will. The connection across time. There is something specific that the geisha world does that almost no other institution in the modern world manages to do. It connects the people within it, physically and concretely, to the people who came before them. Not through history books, not through museums, not through the abstract knowledge that something used to be done in a particular way in a particular place. Through the actual practice, through the body. The maiko who dances the Inoue school dance today is dancing a dance that was taught to her teacher by her teacher's teacher in a chain of physical transmission that goes back to the founding of the school in the early 19th century. The specific weight of the fan in the hand, the specific timing of the head turn, the specific quality of the pause between positions. These things were transmitted from body to body, from living teacher to living student, without break, across 200 years. This is different from reading about how the dance was done. This is doing how the dance was done. The maiko's body contains the same dance that the maiko of 1850 and the maiko of 1900 and the maiko of 1950 performed, not as a recreation, not as a historical reconstruction, but as a living practice transmitted without interruption from then to now. When she dances, she is connected to all of them. The shamisen player who sits behind her carries the same connection. The teacher who corrected her this morning carries the same connection. The okei-san who runs the okiya carries it through her own years of practice, and through the years of the practitioners she trained and the practitioners who trained her. The Hanamachi is a time machine that does not move through time, but carries time within itself. Everyone in it is simultaneously in the present. In Kyoto, in the 21st century, in a world of smartphones and bullet trains, and streaming services, and every other feature of the contemporary moment, and in the continuous present of the tradition, which includes all the moments that have preceded this one, and which gives the present moment its depth and its context and its meaning. This is the thing that is hardest to describe to someone who has not experienced it. The specific quality of doing something that has been done the same way for 200 years. The specific quality of weight that this gives to the doing of it. The specific quality of connection to the people who did it before. Not as a romantic thought, not as a conceptual idea, but as a physical and embodied reality, felt in the body that is doing the same thing the same way. The Maiko on the wooden box tonight is the same as the Maiko on the wooden box 200 years ago in everything that matters about the tradition. The same discipline, the same dedication, the same quality of patient suffering in the service of beauty. Different person, same practice. This is the continuity of the tradition. This is what traditions carry. This is why they are worth carrying. You are warm tonight, in your bed, in your moment, in your life. And the Maiko is on her wooden box in hers. And the Geisha of 1850 was on her wooden box in hers. And across the gap of time and culture and circumstance, the connection is real. Not because traditions are romantic or because the past is better than the present, but because the human commitment to doing something well, to training seriously, to bearing discomfort in the service of art, to carrying something forward, this commitment does not change. It has the same quality in 2026 that it had in 1826, and that it will have in 2226 if the tradition is still going, which it may or may not be, but which tonight it still is. The click of the okobo on the stone, the smell of the camellia oil in the hair, the weight of the 10-kilogram kimono, the burn of the incense marking the flower money time, the shamisen specific resonance in the wooden room, the white of the collar against the black of the formal kimono on the hasaku morning, the cherry blossom kanzashi in the elaborate hairstyle of the April Maiko, the wooden box, every night, the wooden box. These are not small things. They are the accumulated specificity of a tradition that has been attending carefully to the detail of what it does and what it means for 300 years. 300 years of attention. 300 years of practice. 300 years of the same care applied to the same things by successive generations of women who chose this life and lived it fully. That accumulated attention is present tonight in the lanes of Gion, in the lanterns that are going out one by one, in the wooden box in the corner of the quiet room, in the sleeping Maiko who will be up tomorrow for the dance class that begins at 10, and in the tradition that will continue, in that body and through it, for as long as she chooses to carry it, which is tonight one more day, as it was yesterday, as it will be tomorrow. The tradition continues because someone carries it. Someone is always carrying it. Tonight, that someone is asleep on a wooden box in Kyoto, and she is carrying it in her sleep. You are warm. You are still. Your pillow is soft and flat and ordinary, and therefore tonight one of the finest pillows in the world. Think for just a moment before sleep takes over entirely of the Maiko on her wooden box in the quiet Okiya in the Gion district of Kyoto. She is probably asleep already. The training day is long, and the body knows when to claim its rest. She is sleeping with the specific discipline of someone who has learned to sleep without moving, which is its own extraordinary achievement. She will be up in a few hours for the day's training. She will not complain. This is what she chose. This is what the tradition requires. This is what 300 years of the same extraordinary commitment looks like from the inside of any given night. Think of the Okasan already planning tomorrow's schedule in the last moments before sleep finds her. The dance class at 10, the shamisen lesson in the afternoon, the osashiki in the evening, the correction that needs to be delivered to the young Maiko about the dance phrase that is still not quite right, delivered with the directness that the Hanamachi uses for corrections, and the warmth that the relationship between the Okeya-san and her Maiko requires. The balance of those two things is itself a skill. The Okeya-san has been practicing it for decades. Think of the lanterns in the lane outside. The ones that have burned this evening are going out. The ones that burned on this lane 100 years ago burned in exactly the same places. The stone under them is the same stone. The wooden buildings leaning toward each other across the narrow width of the Hanamachi lane are the same buildings, or buildings on the same foundations, or buildings that replaced those buildings and remembered what they looked like. The Hanamachi has been here a long time. It is still here, and in a few hours, when the dance class begins, it will be here still. The shamisen is in its case, the kanzashi are wrapped in paper. The wooden box holds its quiet vigil. The Maiko is asleep on it. The tradition continues around her and through her and because of her, and the lanterns of the Hanamachi burn softly in the winter lane, casting their warm light on the empty stone, on the ancient wooden buildings, on the world that has been here, doing what it does, since before any of the people currently doing it were born, since before your grandparents were born, since before your great-grandparents were born. The lanterns burning, the shamisen playing, the wooden box waiting, the tradition carrying itself forward, one Maiko at a time, one dance class at a time, one ozashiki at a time, one night at a time, into whatever morning is coming. Sleep now. Sleep well. Your pillow is extraordinary. You simply did not know it until tonight. The Flower Town knows. It has always known. It is what the wooden box was for.